Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining our webinar on the Municipal Utility Community Solar Workbook. We are going to give folks just another minute to get logged on and settled, and we'll get started soon. Okay, good afternoon again, and thank you all once again for joining this National Community Solar Partnership webinar. My name is Anna Balzart, and I am the Solar Community Engagement Coordinator for the National Community Solar Partnership. We are so excited to have so many folks join this webinar today to learn a little bit more about how municipal utilities can lead on community solar projects and programs in their jurisdictions, and how the recently released workbook can guide your efforts and the efforts of those that are developing community solar that may not be municipal utilities. Lots of good lessons in this workbook. Before we jump in, I do want to cover a few quick housekeeping items. So first, this session will be recorded today. We're going to make the recording and the slides available after this session on our website, and I'll be sure to share a link to that website in the chat before the session ends. Second, a part of this event's purpose is to be able to answer your questions about the workbook and about community solar. So we invite you throughout the session to enter your questions in the questions box. And we do encourage you to put them in the questions rather than the comments, just so we can make sure we answer them. We will have a question and answer period towards the end of the webinar, and we'll address them all there. But again, feel free to add them to that Q&A anytime during the session. And then finally, we have enabled the live transcript for this session. If you'd like to see the subtitles, you can click on the live transcript button and select the show subtitles feature. If you have any issues with enabling the live transcript, you can directly message Jackie Petrie in the chat, and she'll be able to help you out. Go to the next slide. And we can go ahead to the next one. Thanks, Jackie. Great. So just to take a quick look at where we're headed for the next hour, after we do a very brief overview on the National Community Solar Partnership, we'll kick things off with an overview of the workbook from Joyce McLaren, who is a researcher at the National Renewable Energy Lab. And then we'll hear from a few of the municipal utilities that were a part of the working group that actually developed this workbook. And Paul Zumo and Dan Crescenzio from APPA are going to moderate those presentations, and then that Q&A portion after that. And then we'll close things out with some updates from Carol Plowfield from APPA and myself on how you can get even more engaged in community solar as a municipal utility or as another community solar stakeholder. Let's go to the next slide. So before I turn things over to Joyce, I'd like to share just a little bit about the National Community Solar Partnership, which is the program that supported the development of this workbook and the collaborative effort that was behind developing the workbook. The National Community Solar Partnership is a really unique program that's run out of the Solar Energy Technologies Office at the Department of Energy. The program receives annual funding to increase access to community solar across the country, with the goal to enable all US households to have community solar access. In partnership with NREL and the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, we have developed a program that is fundamentally driven by collaboration and also driven by resource sharing across a full spectrum of community solar stakeholders. So on this slide, we have a couple of our key focus areas. So to guide all of this work around community solar, NREL collects data and publishes an annual report called Sharing the Sun, which covers a number of characteristics of all the community solar projects across the country. And as of 2021, there were about 1,900 projects and about 5 megawatts of projects online. And we've seen a growth in community solar at a rate of about 120% year over year, potentially growing even faster than that in the future. Again, collaboration is really central to our program, and right now we have over 1,200 partners engaged on our online community platform. In this platform, they can ask questions in a discussion forum, they can share resources and events, and they can connect directly with other community solar stakeholders across a broad spectrum of stakeholder types, including government, utilities, financial institutions, developers, community-based organizations, and others. And then anyone who becomes an NCSP partner, and we're going to pitch this a couple of times throughout the event, it is free and easy to become an NCSP partner, is eligible to receive direct technical assistance at no cost from our team of TA providers, which includes technical experts from NREL and Lawrence Berkeley National Labs, and a number of consultants and experts in topic areas such as policy analysis, financing, program design, and even outreach and marketing. We also occasionally run group technical assistance through collaboratives like the Municipal Utility Collaborative that developed the content you'll see today. We've also run a collaborative on multifamily affordable housing providers, and we are currently running a collaborative with states. So you can go to the next slide. About this time last year, the partnership set a new target to enable community solar to power the equivalent of 5 million households and generate 1 billion in energy bill savings by 2025. And that represents a pretty big increase, about a 700% increase in community solar capacity by 2025, and then an average bill savings of 20% for community solar subscribers. As we launched that ambitious target, we also put together a set of initiatives that we call the Pathway to Success that are designed to address what our stakeholders identified as the most pressing and persistent barriers to equitable community solar deployment. So the barriers that those address and the initiatives around those are around access to technical expertise and capacity building, more deeply engaging with states and encouraging leadership on community solar efforts, more equitable access to project capital, improved and more equitable customer engagement and acquisition, and then finally improved messaging and recognition around what community solar is and the benefits that it provides. We won't have time to go into more detail on these initiatives today, but if you'd like to learn more or get involved in any of them, I encourage you to join the partnership or feel free to reach out to me directly. I will put my contact information in the chat as well. And the National Community Solar Partnership was very excited to lead this effort to engage more deeply with municipal utilities and develop this community solar workbook because the public power sector is such an important part of the community solar landscape. And we really feel it has a unique opportunity to lead on providing what we've identified as the meaningful benefits of community solar, such as ensuring that all households have access to community solar, that subscribers can achieve meaningful bill savings through their community solar subscriptions, that community solar provides opportunities for increased resilience, that there are opportunities for community ownership and participation in community solar projects, and that there is equitable workforce development associated with community solar projects. So I am very happy at this point to turn things over to Joyce McLaren to discuss in more detail how the workbook supports municipal utilities in delivering those benefits. Joyce.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everybody. I am Joyce McLaren. I work for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and I'm on the staff of the National Community Solar Partnership. I've been with NREL for about 13 years, and I provide technical analyses and decision support to a variety of different stakeholder types, including those in NCSP, as well as the Solar Energy Innovation Network. And it's all to facilitate deployment of solar and storage at all scales. So if you could advance, please, Jackie. So as part of my work in the NCSP, I was leading the Municipal Utility Collaborative, which was a group of about 7 different municipal utilities that were selected to participate over the course of not quite a year in this collaborative effort. And these utilities were selected based on their readiness to explore the idea of community solar. We met in 2021 between April and December, And we had monthly meetings and guest speakers and very active discussion around community solar and what the goals and barriers and interests were of these utilities. So out of that process, we really gathered a lot of information, and we decided to compile all of that into this workbook that we are announcing today, so that everybody can benefit from that process. And although the information was originally developed for a municipal utility audience, really it is relevant to anyone that is considering a community solar project, developing a project. And so we want to encourage everybody, even if you're not a municipal utility, to take a look at this workbook. And so we'd like to walk through some of the elements of the workbook today to introduce you to a little bit of the content. It's a bit of a teaser. And I will also say that throughout the workbook, there's a lot of links to recordings and slide decks that were part of the collaborative effort. So all of those resources are being made available through this workbook. If you could advance, please. So the chapters of the workbook really lead the readers through the project development process, but they also stand alone. So if you're interested in just one aspect of the community solar development process, you could just jump straight to whichever chapter is most applicable to your stage of development. But it really leads the reader through from the very beginning of thinking about your project goals, and the market potential through site selection, program design, subscription design, exploring the financials of the project, putting out a request for proposal, and then marketing the program and implementing the program. So all the way from the beginning to the end of the process, these chapters lead you through. If you could advance, please, we'll dive into a little bit of what each chapter contains. And each chapter has something that we call an equity call-out box, or equity call-out page, more like it. There are certain considerations that will help you design a community solar project that prioritizes equity. And so we've highlighted all of these in each chapter, in each topical area. And these elements can enable or hinder participation by low-income customers or people of color. We also point to tools and data sources that you can use to create a project that is more equitable. And one example here that I've highlighted is the DOE LEED tool that identifies locations that have the highest energy burden. So I just wanted to draw attention that every chapter has these equity callouts in it. Advance, please. We'll look at the content of chapter 1. It's a relatively short chapter, and it's really looking at the goals of your project to understand what your priorities are for your project. What do you want to get out of building community solar? Are you really focused on cost savings? Are you looking to expand access to green choices? Is this going to be the only community solar project that you're building, or is it one of a very large portfolio? Or do you not know yet? Is this a trial? Do you have a focus on low-income customers? Do you have an anchor tenant? What kind of educational opportunities might you be able to provide, or workforce development? So these types of goals, exploring the answers to these questions, will really serve as the guidelines in designing your project. It will inform the design of the project, the site, all the way from the site selection to releasing the RFP. So starting here is a good place to start. Next slide, please. So the second chapter is about gauging your market potential. It's all about understanding the subgroups or the market segments of your customer base. And really, this is going to help you design a program that draws in and retains customers. So this chapter has survey design tips and survey questions. It has lessons learned from different landscape analyses. It explores different formats for stakeholder engagement and the questions that you could ask during stakeholder engagement, and has points you to a lot of resources to understand the different priorities of different stakeholder types, including LMI households. So that's what Chapter 2 is focused on. And certainly there's a lot of resources in there to explore. I'll also point out that we have appendices. Every chapter will point you to appendices at the end, where the reader can go and read more about different topical areas that are particularly relevant to you. Next slide, please. Chapter 3 is on project siting, and really there's nothing particularly different about citing a community solar project as compared to any other solar project. But because community solar projects have a more public-facing element, I might say, there might be certain considerations. So do you want the subscribers to be able to visit the site? Do you want do you want the subscribers to be located right around where you're citing the project? Are you looking for educational opportunities with this community solar project? So there's certain things that would be relevant to think about, in particular, about a community solar project siting. But this chapter really covers the spectrum of different siting considerations, including suitable land and different rooftop considerations, using GIS and rooftop data and solar potential data to find an appropriate site, understanding constraints from topography and different soil conditions and habitats, clarifying authority having jurisdiction over the land, interconnection costs, siting on public property versus private property, creating public awareness, and prioritizing equity, of course. And I just want to point out on the equity side that studies have, of course, confirmed the importance of the peer effect in solar adoption. The closer you are to a solar project, the more likely you are to adopt solar yourself. And this effect is especially pronounced in low-income neighborhoods, it has been found. And so you can encourage more equitable adoption of solar by citing solar panels with community solar projects in areas where not many already exist. And so we just wanted to point that out, that there's an opportunity to use community solar here and take advantage of the peer effect. Slide, please. So chapter 4, if I had to pick a favorite chapter in this workbook, I have to say chapter 4 is my favorite because it really gets to the heart of community solar. The thing that makes community solar very different from other solar projects. And as well, it's a very complex piece of the community solar program picture. This covers the way to make a community solar program what it is, how to design the program, how to design the subscription, how to design a community solar program that enables participation by a variety of different customer types, customer classes. So these topics include things like, are you going to have an anchor tenant? What kind of participant mix do you want to encourage to subscribe to your project? Is this a project-based program or a portfolio-based program? And don't worry if you don't know what all of these different elements are. That's what this chapter is about. It's about teaching you what are these different considerations when you're designing the program. Talks about subscription capacity minimums and maximums, pros and cons of different choices, term limits, exit rules, transferability, how to handle renewable energy credits and how to talk about those with your subscribers. Upfront sign up fees versus not having to handle subscription payments. Next slide, please. So just an example of a program design element is this concept of, is it a project or a portfolio program? So for example, a project-based program allows subscribers to sign up for a very specific solar project. They know exactly which solar project they are subscribed to. This really helps you with marketing. You can point exactly to where that solar project is. You can invite them to come out and visit. You can have them sign their panel, whatever kind of activities you'd like to have to connect them with the physical solar system in the community. And this way of doing it assures that subscribers that do have concerns about land use or local development, local workforce use, or other kinds of concerns about the way solar is developed, it assures them that the project that they are subscribing to is meeting their personal criteria. That's one benefit of it. On the other hand, there is the portfolio-based programs that allocate subscriptions based on the aggregated solar capacity across a utility's or a developer's portfolio. So maybe you have 4 different solar projects that you've developed over time. All of those are rolled together into your community solar program. So it doesn't tie a subscription to one individual set of solar panels. It kind of aggregates them all. And what that does is give you the ability to take advantage of the falling prices of solar across all different program subscribers. So really the rates can be reduced over the course of time. So that's just this is just an example of one thing you need to think about, and one thing that this workbook will help you kind of weigh the pros and cons for. Next slide, please. Quickly, another example is an example of a subscription model element, and that's the upfront fees. Do you want to charge an upfront fee? Well, they can help you hedge against the costs, the construction costs, the high initial costs of building a community solar project. They can help with customer retention. It really shows people have a buy-in to this community solar subscription if they're willing to put up a chunk of money up front. And they can be combined with monthly payments. You don't have to make somebody pay for the whole subscription right up front. You can have some subscription fee and then monthly payments all along. Those are some pros. Some cons, on the other hand, is that this really can be a barrier for LMI households. They won't have a chunk of money, perhaps, to put up front. And we've also seen in the past that programs without upfront fees typically do have lower customer acquisition costs. People don't like the idea of having to put a chunk of money up front. So really a best practice that we highlight in the workbook is that no upfront fees reduce barriers to entry and reduce customer acquisition costs. Next slide, please. So moving on to chapter 5. Chapter 5 is an example of a topic that everybody wants to tackle from the very beginning. They want to know, they're anxious to talk about, will a community solar project pencil out in my location? But we have to wait till chapter 5 to get there, because you can't really model it accurately until you've answered all of those initial questions about siting, about your goals, about siting, about customer mix, about program design. You need to have a good idea about the answers to all of those questions before you can really have an accurate model of the economics and financials of your proposed project. So in chapter 5, we give you a lot of detail, really excellent detail to walk you through the process of modeling both the solar production using PV watts, as well as the financials, the cost flow using NREL System Advisor model. And the System Advisor model, it's free to download. Both of these tools are free to download from the NREL website. And there are There are learning tools to help you learn how to use them. There's a lot of great support in learning how to use them and interpret the results. And the system advisor model, as of last year, has a new community solar module in it that allows you to understand different subscription designs. So what do the costs look like for different customer types? So it's really a great tool, and this chapter will walk you through collecting the data, where to get the data that you need for the inputs, how to make the inputs, and how to understand what's coming out of the tool. So let's move on to the next slide, please, and look at chapter 6. That's the request for proposals phase. So once you are ready to hit go and find a developer for your project, this is where you're going to want to look. This is all about really not reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of really great examples out there of requests for proposals for different entity types, different use cases. And we try in this chapter to point you to the resources that are already there for writing a very strong request for proposal that will get you some very good proposals from developers. So really, we're pointing you to how to be specific so that you can compare your proposals against each other easily, and how to determine your selection criteria up front so that you can convey those selection criteria to developers and really get proposals that meet your needs. A lot of good additional resources here that we point you to in this chapter. Next slide, please. And this is the last chapter of the workbook before the appendices. It's about marketing your program and acquiring customers. It's how to talk about your program with people that don't sit around and think about solar all day, every day like we do. A lot of the offerings can be confusing. The difference between community solar and different solar offerings can be confusing. So this chapter provides some assistance in thinking about what are the key messages you want to talk about, what are the value propositions for your different customer types, and how to continue to make clear communications throughout the program implementation phase in order to improve your customer satisfaction and improve customer retention. So that's what this last chapter is about. And it's followed by a couple of different appendices that contain resources that are, it's an annotated bibliography of different resources that are categorized according to the topic of each chapter so that you can easily go through and find a lot of great information on all of these different topic areas. So next slide, please, is my last one. Just to highlight some next steps, of course, downloading the workbook, joining the National Community Solar Partnership if you haven't already, and it is putting a link to where to download the workbook in the chat so that you can just click on that directly to download it. And then again, I'll highlight the opportunity to apply for technical assistance through the National Community Solar Partnership. You join the partnership and it's very easy to apply for technical assistance. We ask that you take a look at the workbook and identify exactly which phase of your development process you're in currently and which part you would like assistance with. Help define exactly what your ask is, and then come to us. And we are really excited to help people get to the next step of their development process through this technical assistance. Two other little coming soon announcements. There is going to be a continuing education course that's offered on Chapter 4, the program design and subscription models. If you're interested in diving deeper into that topic area, please watch the APPA site for that course that'll be coming this winter. It's a couple of days, half days, that we'll be offering that you can really dive into that topic. And then also there'll be a publication coming out that summarizes the working group and highlights different participant goals and activities, really great examples of what folks are doing on the ground. So with that, I will pass it on to Paul. Thanks so much, everyone.
All right, thank you, Joyce. And if we can go to the the next slide. Just wanted to give some background on the APPA and the American Public Power Association and who we are. We're the voice of nonprofit public power utilities. There are over 2,000 public power utilities in the country, and about 3/4 of those are members of APPA. And those utilities serve approximately 49 million people and employ about 96,000 people. And so we provide advocacy and education opportunities for our members, and we partner with members to promote public power, helping community-owned utilities deliver superior services. On to the next slide. And just a little background on our role with NCSP. And we've been partners here for a couple of years now. We have been interested in public power as part of our Moving Public Power Forward strategic initiative and our strategic pillar. We've been interested in the topic of community solar because community solar and public power are kind of a natural fit. So we created a community solar guidebook a few years ago to serve as a roadmap. And so this is a natural follow-on. We've facilitated a technical assistance program that comes with joining NCSP and provided some consultation and work and sort of forums for our members to come together. And then just working with DOE and NREL and the NCSP working group to identify and address common barriers. So I would like to introduce our speakers, the next two speakers who represent two of our members and participants in this working group. Hannah Mulroy, Energy Portfolio Development Manager, and Susan Bartlett, the Account Manager for Longmont Power and Communications. And after that, we'll hear from Al Buss, President at Vernon County Energy District. So with that, I'll pass it on to Hannah.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to be here today. Again, I'm Hannah Mulroy. I am the Energy Portfolio Development Manager for Longmont Power and Communications. I'm just going to take a brief second to tell you a little bit about Longmont. We are a home rule city located about 45 minutes north of Denver mostly in Boulder County, but straddling a county line with Weld County to the east. We have, as of the last census, 100,000 residents, and we've grown quite a lot in the last 20 years. So we're dealing with quite a lot of rapid development and energy-related issues. So I'm very happy to be here today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our participation in the Community Solar Work Group. Slide, please. So we just want to generally talk about our utility and city goals. The city of Longmont has 100% renewable electric by 2030, as we are the electric provider and we receive our natural gas, our residents receive natural gas from Xcel Energy. We're focused on the 100% renewable electric. We are also have a focus on local supplemental generation. So not just what we're getting from our generation and transmission provider, but we do have a focus on local distributed generation and hopefully soon here community solar. And then we also have an equitable access to solar for low and moderate income residents, a goal of improving that for our low and moderate income residents here. So slide, please. So I will be forthcoming before I jump into this and just kind of say I am picking up our involvement in the National Community Solar Partnership where others have left off. So the actual work group was worked through by a predecessor to mine. Susan's been kind of hanging on in between, and now I've taken over and will be my primary person. So I didn't actually participate in the workshops, but I am leading some of our technical assistance things moving forward. So after talking kind of to Susan and looking through some of Tim's past resources, we want to talk a little bit about why we participated in it. We really wanted to learn more about how other municipal utilities are approaching community solar. We certainly wanted to leverage NREL expertise and resources, which have proven to be very, very helpful. We also really needed help with kind of scoping an actionable item. Our city council and our staff have been speaking about community solar for quite some time, but we didn't really know where to begin and how to get something that was manageable or actionable. We found it very helpful that we got guidance to apply for technical assistance once we scoped a project. And some of the effort we went into, I think what's now chapter 1 and 2 or whatever of the workbook, site selection. We used that to kind of narrow down a list. We had a solar feasibility study done in 2019. So we, based on that list and sources from NREL and NCSP, we were able to kind of narrow down to a site, which will go into further detail here in a moment, and then apply for technical assistance. And again, through guidance on site selection through the municipal working group. Slide, please. They kind of asked us what was the influence on our community solar approach? What did participating in the workshop do for us? And I think one of the big things that came out of it was okay to start small. I think a lot of us had in our heads like 2 megawatt system in a field and multiple customers and anchor tenants and whatnot, but we need a proof of concept. We need to figure out how to build things and, acquire customers and what our subscription model should be. So we really kind of came out of it knowing it was okay for us to start small, which is nice. Practice on buildings we own. We as the city have quite a lot of real estate, buildings and land. So rather than trying to partner with the third party or go through a PPA or something like that, kind of focus on municipal owned buildings. And then use what we learned to scale to other city-owned facilities or partner properties. So such as, and I'll get into like a Longmont Housing Authority, kind of use what we learn in a small demonstration project and scale it to other projects. And we're really excited to report we've made some progress. So we've developed scopes for 2 projects and we plan to go out to RFP bid for those 2 projects. One of those is a city-owned parks facility, which I'll go into some more information on here, that we're going to utilize as a demonstration project for community solar, and then a multifamily affordable housing property that is owned by our partner organization, Longmont Housing Authority. Next slide, please. So we're really excited. We applied for technical assistance, and Joyce and her team have been very great and accepted us into their technical assistance program, and we just began that process with them. As they mentioned, when you apply for technical assistance, you have to identify one of many areas that you're looking for assistance in. And because we had already had the site selected, because we already have financing in place and things of the sort, we went to them for program design. So we need help developing a subscription model for city-owned facilities. And then because with the affordable housing, it's a master metered, not individual metered site. We really working with NREL and NCSP to figure out how can benefit from the savings we passed on to LMI residents in the multifamily affordable housing that are not individually metered. So that's been an interesting experience. Slide, please. And this is good. This will be I think this might be my second last slide. This is one of the 2 proposed projects. I didn't want to share too much information on the Longmont Housing Authority project, because we're not sure it squarely fits into a community solar model, but also it's just there's some privacy matters to be worked through. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our Roosevelt Pavilion. The Roosevelt Pavilion is a big open air pavilion at Roosevelt Park, kind of right off Main Street in downtown, one of our oldest parks. It's got our senior center located there. It's got our recreation centers or gym. And then there's also the bus rapid transit kind of bus station there. So it's a very highly visible site. In our solar feasibility study, we found that the estimate was that we could have a 75 kW system that's AC, 130 give or take kilowatt hours per year. The price was quite a bit lower. Actually, it was at like 165, but we went up given inflation. We think it's going to be about $230,000. It's a south-facing roof and there's public access, as I mentioned, very visible site. This is an enormous, very red building. I can't miss it. And then what we're trying to figure out is like, how do we go forward with this? The options are, we could not convert it to a community solar and just keep it on the roof and do a net metered situation. This pavilion hosts the ice rink in the winter. So it directly offset that use and then feed the grid in the summer. So that's one option, obviously not community solar. The other 2 options are to provide subscriptions just to our LMI residents or customers. How that might work really well for us is we focus on LMI customers and equity, but we also have a Longmont Cares program where individuals are enrolled in utility assistance based on a qualification for a program. We try really hard to make it easy and not require a lot of income qualification documents. So we already kind of have a pool of individuals we could go to and say, hey, Cares participants, we have 20 subscriptions to offer. So that's one option. Another option would be to do more market rate subscription to our current renewable power purchase participants. We currently allow people to pay a small per kilowatt hour delta to purchase 100% renewable energy and or buy 100 kilowatt blocks of renewable energy from our G&T provider. This is a more community specific way to see your dollar spent, right? So there would be another option to offer subscriptions at a market rate to our PPP participants, a lot of P's, and or a combination. So yesterday we kind of talked about something we're looking for assistance with from NREL and NCPS is actually determining how does this work? Do we do 50-50? Do we 60-40? Do we do all LMI, all market rate? Like how can we set this up? And that's kind of the step we're in process with them now. And then next slide. So as I mentioned, we are in the TA process with NCPS. We are just beginning, kind of kicking off the actual program design and SAM financial modeling. A lot of the last couple of weeks has been spent just getting approvals from higher ups to move forward. So we're hoping in late 2022, we'll work through the TA on project design. That's actually supposed to be program design. In late 2022, I'm preparing an RFP for solar installation, both at Roosevelt and the Affordable Housing Development. We hope by early next year, we'll be executing a contract with the installer. And that by the end of next year, it's pretty straightforward installation. We could actually have the community solar or projects constructed. And then 2024 seems like a reasonable time to actually launch the demonstration community solar and LMI solar programs. And I think that's my last slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. Before I hand it over to Al, just a reminder that you can put your questions in the Q&A and we will read out all the questions at the end of this session. So Al, over to you.
All right, thanks, Paul. My name's Al Buss from the Vernon County Energy District. We are on the southwestern Wisconsin along the Mississippi River. So in the beautiful Driftless area of Wisconsin. So the next slide, please. So we're in a little bit different situation, and I guess I'd like to just clear up what an energy district is. We are a county level nonprofit. We're modeled off of the soil and water conservation districts. And the idea is that, working together, we can support our shared energy resources. The first energy district was formed in Iowa in 2010. There are about 11 districts right now, and we happen to be the first one in Wisconsin. And we're just getting to the end of this energy planning grant that we had gotten through our Public Service Commission to help us, kind of get off the ground here. Next slide, please. One of the things that's kind of interesting about Vernon County, we have 8 different utilities. 2 different IOUs serve some of the cities in our county. We've got 3 municipal utilities and 3 different electric co-ops. One, as you can see from the map, covers most of the county, but there's 2 others that cover little slivers in the corner there. The utility we've been working with is, on this map, that's the 2950, that's the village of Lafarge. So next slide, please. As our nonprofit, I just kind of wanted to point this out. From our mission statement, we're promoting the wise and efficient energy, use of energy and encouraging the transition to locally owned and operated renewable energy. And that for us was why this, participating in this work group seemed so relevant, because that is really what we are about. Okay, next slide, please. So I'll tell you a little about the village of Lafarge. It's a small village, 730 people. They do have their own municipal utility. A few people may have heard of Organic Valley. That happens to be where Organic Valley started. The headquarters are located there. There were a group of people very involved doing this community solar feasibility study that was started in 2014 and had kind of gotten put together in 2016. And then things got really wet. There were major flood events in 3 years in a row. 2016 and 2017 were both very close to record floods. And then in 2018, it was just crazy. And the flood that came that year exceeded the previous record by 4 feet. It was enough that the substation was underwater, the backup generator was underwater, the village was without utility, without power for 3 days. A lot of people, that's very fresh in their mind. Next slide, please. And this also does happen to be, primarily a LMI area. They are considered this area is considered an at-risk community. The last numbers I saw, the median household income was just under $33,000 a year. Okay, next slide. So what we've done so far, we began by forming a community solar committee. One of the village board members is a participant in that committee. The rest of us are just community members. And so we've met, every 2 weeks since, for just about a year now. As we put together and tried to formalize our ideas, we did a presentation to the Village Utility Committee this last February. We then followed that up with a community energy independence event. As you can imagine, after being without power for 3 days in 2018, resilience is a major concern of most of the residents. So the feedback and that we got from that event was really tremendous. Then in July, we did a community visioning event. And the difference between the energy independent event and the visioning event was energy independence was more to talk about what energy independence means to people. And the visioning event was more to discuss how are we going to get there. Without a doubt, community solar is the one topic that in both events, everybody kept coming back to, that we want community solar. So, after that event, and because we are, a nonprofit, we're basically a third party participating in this. We did create and enter into a memorandum of understanding with the village, so that with the village board, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page. We realize that the time commitment and the amount of work to bring this all together is pretty significant, and we just really wanted to make sure that everybody's on the same page as we're going to go forward. Okay, next slide, please. So our next steps, now that we've got the memorandum of understanding, we will be meeting with UMEG, which is the agency that represents the village utility. UMEG actually represents 16 small utilities in our area. It's Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, but kind of this corner of the world here. And so they're the ones who negotiate with the G&T. And so our next step is we're going to meet with them. We do know that a couple of the communities that they represent have done community solar projects in the past. So we want to, make sure that we're clear on how rates are going to be affected, how these other communities have done, their financial models, their program design. How the experience they had working with the Public Service Commission in Wisconsin, and any hurdles that we need to overcome there. When I think about it, we're very much at chapter 4 in the book. We're at the beginning stages of that right now. I kind of feel like the timing on all of this is really good for us. With the recent passage of the IRA, I think there's a lot of opportunities here to help make this whole process more streamlined and economical for everyone. So before our next community meeting, we need to also make sure we do have a better understanding of how the Inflation Reduction Act increases our options here. what that brings to the table. Next slide, please. And, and to kind of sum up, why how the participating in the work group helped us, with us being, kind of outside people, we're just energy enthusiasts, all volunteers. The idea, having some knowledge of how this whole process works has been very helpful. One of the things that we realize is because we have 8 utilities in our county, we can work with one that's kind of, the groundwork's been laid to already get, community solar off the ground. We're hoping once we have some success in Lafarge, it'll be easier to then work with other utilities in our area as well. For me, the work group and this workbook, the way it spells out very clear, well-organized steps. Here's the process from beginning to end. For me, that's, and for us, that's very helpful because it's a pretty overwhelming task, and to just jump in, and it's kind of hard to know where to start. It's also been a great tool for us as we've had discussions with the board and the utility committee and our own committee, and in our community meetings. It's really given us a good structure and the information that we need to provide meaningful questions and education so that people understand how this all can work. And the reality is, this collaboration, especially with the way we're doing it, is I think very critical. That we need the village board, we need the people who live in the community to participate. The Organic Valley is very interested in the project, and there are a couple other. There's a medical center and a truck dealer in town that we're looking at, that they could hopefully be participants as well. But so for us, that collaboration about really bringing everybody along, I think is really important, and the work group has helped us to see that, and with that in mind, that's where this take our time and do it right. I think that's really important. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Paul. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Al. And a few questions came in, so I'll try to get to those who addressed the letter to speakers first. Just a clarification, Al, what's GNT, or did you mean to say GNT?
Yeah, generation and transmission.
Okay, figured as much.
So,
Okay.
yeah, the village buys their power from Dairyland Power and here.
And this is a question that could apply to probably not just utility speakers, but should community energy include other renewable resources like biofuel peakers to help balance the intermittent renewables? I guess it's a policy question. I don't know.
Well, I'll talk about that a little bit. That is something that we have talked about a little bit as we're designing this. After that flood in 2018, the village is moving their substation. And one of the things we've discussed is actually making sure there's adequate room where potentially a battery backup system would go. So instead of biofuels or anything like that, we're looking at storage as a way to make up for the intermittency.
Okay, thanks. I guess I'll start from the top. Other questions that came in: is legislative authorization at the state level for community solar projects a prerequisite for allowing shared solar and storage systems to be actualized by communities?
I can take a stab at that one, and then others can jump in. Basically, as of last year, 22 states and DC had enabling legislation, which does allow for third-party development of solar and creates a market for community solar development. That is enabling legislation. You can have community solar in states that do not have such legislation. And that occurs through the utility. So the utility would be the one developing those community solar projects. And there are additional states that don't have enabling legislation that do have community solar projects. So it's not a strict requirement, but it does open up the market to third-party developers. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, well, just a little. Wisconsin happens to be one of those states that does not have third-party enabling legislation. And that's why we've been working with the Village of Lafarge, because they have expressed interest, so that utility is able to, support and create that project. Some of the other utilities in our area may or may not, at their discretion, participate in a community solar if they want.
Another question, the next, I'll take it one by one. Other than the LEED tool, can NCSP identify low-income or energy community tracking tools as defined in the newly signed legislation that was passed a week ago, the IRA?
I can address that one too. And really, I'll just say that we're working on it. The answer will be yes, eventually. There are still details about the way that the IRA will be implemented and the rules that will come out of the Treasury that are not yet quite defined yet. But we are already in coordination to try to map out these the geospatial elements that are in the IRA, and we will be able to provide some assistance in that space once we have better definitions. But yes, it's in the works.
Thanks. We do have a handful of more questions, but we're coming up on 3 o'clock, and I want to make sure we have enough time for Carol. So if we have our hard stop at 3 o'clock, we have to go back to the presentations and answer some of these questions offline. So unless I'm corrected, if we can go back to the PowerPoints, I believe Carol Plofield from APPA is going to talk about the ETC.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Anna, Joyce, obviously the rest of the team at DOE and NREL for all the great work on the National Community Solar Partnership. And in addition to Paul and Dan here at APP, I did want to take a quick opportunity to acknowledge a lot of hard work by Maddie Wendell, who did a lot on the workbook, and she recently left APPA, but along with Joyce and Anna, they put a lot of effort into it, and I think it's a great product. So again, my name is Carol Plowfield, and I am the Clean Energy Strategy Manager with APPA, and I'm working on energy transition community efforts here, and this workbook fits really well with the work that we're doing, and it's got a very practical approach to project development, as was mentioned before. And much like the NCSP collaboration, the Energy Transition Community, or ETC, is also a collaboration between APPA and DOE. In our case, it's with the Office of Electricity, and we're coordinating with public power utilities and trying to learn from our members and have them provide input to us about what's really going out there on the front lines, what their experiences are, what their needs are, what tools and resources would be most helpful to them as they navigate the energy transition to modernize their operations and achieve lower emissions while maintaining reliability for the customers, as was mentioned earlier by Al. So anytime you're navigating anything, it helps to have a map. So when we formed the ETC working group, the first goal was to produce a roadmap as a guide and to help identify what the best path forward is for each utility and their particular circumstance. So the ETC working group is nation agencies, state regional associations reflecting the diversity of the industries from small, medium, large public power utilities from all regions of the country. Some have more resources than others. Some own their generation, others purchase their power. And so the solutions are going to be as varied as the utilities and the communities that they serve. But if you go to the next slide, the roadmap is basically designed to reflect this range of experiences, and it will be the basis of further guidance and tools and resources that we're going to develop in each of the 6 lanes of the highway on the road forward that we've outlined as it's kind of sticking with the roadmap metaphor. And those are program development, energy purchasing, technology planning, pilot projects, technology transfer, and leveraging investments. And, at times, as we've heard today from Hannah and Al, a utility may need to change lanes to make the progress necessary to get to their destination. And we want to help provide information on what some of the most promising paths will be. And I think the success of this workbook and how practical it is why I think we really fit well together. I think this project complements what we're doing here on energy transition community. And with that, I think I will turn things back over to Anna to close things out and talk about what we're doing looking forward. And again, thanks to everyone on the team, DOE and NREL, for all their great work on this partnership and this workbook.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you so much to all of our presenters and speakers today. Really great to hear all of those details. So Jackie, if we can go to our last slide here. Just a reminder that there are plenty of opportunities to stay engaged and to take advantage of the resources of the American Public Power Association, NREL, and NCSP. Of course, we encourage you to download the workbook and kind of peruse it yourselves and understand where you might be in the process. Then we encourage you to join the National Community Solar Partnership. That is really the hub of all of these resources and many more. And then once you're a partner, we do encourage you to apply for technical assistance so that we can help you navigate the process of starting community solar, regardless of what type of stakeholder you are. And we'll share all of the links to these after this as well, and you'll get a copy of these slides. I do just want to know, I know we didn't have time to get to all the questions, so we'll do our best to answer what we can via email when we follow up with you all as well. So I know we're a little over time, so thank you all so much for joining. We hope you'll stay connected and hope that you'll continue to push forward community solar projects in your own jurisdictions. Thank you.